Nate, we are back with our last mock of a mock, looking at the rookies of the 24 class. Next week, we'll be drafting from a real mock draft, the actual NFL draft. All the speculation out the books. We have real landing spots coming up, but we need to do one more mock to kind of get us a feel for how this rookie class might be shaping out. If you enjoy the video, please leave a like, comment down below what you thought of this mock. But furthermore, before we get into it, we have a boatload of announcements to get into. We have a crazy week ahead of us here. Zach and I will be diving into moves to make before your rookie draft tomorrow. After that, Nate and Mike will be diving into our rookie blockbuster, as we're calling it, or a mega episode, diving into sleeper studs and more, everything you could want to know about this rookie draft class. And then after that, we'll be taking Thursday off, a little travel day for all of us. And that's going to be for the boys over at the Discord. If you want to hang out with us and talk all of the NFL draft goodness, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in there, hang out with us for the draft. Get a week free. Check out what it's like during draft week, peak Discord season. And then after that, after every single day of the NFL draft, we will be live streaming, talking through the picks, talking through some of our favorite landing spots, what this means for your rookie drafts before they even kick off. And to put a beautiful bow on top of everything, we'll be launching our rookie draft guide, which will be available for pre-order very soon. Check the pinned comment below on how to get your hands on that. That'll be launching in full access Sunday morning after all of the draft picks and everything is in. There's going to be a bunch of stuff coming this week. It's going to be a crazy week for us, Nate. It's going to be a crazy week for all of you out there. And it's a big thank you to all of you out there for supporting us as much as you do, that we're able to do stuff like this. We are going to be hanging out for the draft together in Connecticut. You, me, Zach, Mike, and Sean. It's going to be a crazy week. But with all that said, it's time to get into the mock. We got a lot of promo in the books today. I apologize. We're getting to the content that people came for, though. First, real quick, I want to preface what we're looking at with this mock draft board. Looking at Dane Bruglar's from The Athletic 7-round mock draft. Looking at round 1, we had Caleb Williams going to Chicago, Jaden Daniels to Washington at picks 1 and 2 respectively. Drake May going to New England at pick 3. J.J. McCarthy, the prophecy has been foretold that he will land in Minnesota at pick 4 in a massive trade-up deal. Pick 5, Marvin Harrison going to Arizona. Pick 6, Malik Neighbors going to the New York Giants. Pick 9, your least favorite mock lock at this point, Rome Odunze to Chicago at pick 9. Brock Bowers headed to the New York Jets at pick 10, maybe one of my least favorite mock locks. Brian Thomas gets picked up by Buffalo at pick 17. They trade up for the guy. And then we see a bit of a switch at the quarterback. We are expecting Bo Nix to get first-round draft capital, but here we see Michael Penix getting drafted in the first round with the 29th pick by the Las Vegas Raiders. And wrapping up the first round, we see Adonai Mitchell going to Kansas City at pick 32. And then just to dip into the top of the second round, Panthers at 33 go Ladd McConkey. Chargers at 37 go Keon Coleman. Saints at 45 go Xavier Worthy. 46, Colts go Ricky Pearsall. 48, Jags go Troy Franklin. And then our boy Bo Nix falling to the Rams, which is a pretty cool spot if I do say so myself. Pick 52, pick 55, the Dolphins pick up Jatavion Sanders. And wrapping up round 2, the Ravens, your Ravens, pick up Xavier Legette at pick 62. But Nate, we are finally getting into this mock. I know it's been a bit. I hope y'all stuck through all of that. It's time to make your first pick. I gave you the 101 because I've done enough talking already. I don't want to also talk the first pick here. What do you got at the 101 Superflex drafts?
Yeah, this has been the same pick that we've had locked in here for a while, and we've now known for a while where Caleb Williams is going to the Chicago Bears. We talked about how this is actually one of the best landing spots any first overall pick has really gone into before, especially this offense. We were just talking before the show about DJ Moore and Keenan Allen's already a great 1-2 punch, and they have been, really projected this entire time to pick up a wide receiver at 9. Most of the time it seems to be Rome Odunze if no one goes up ahead of them and picks him. So, if Caleb Williams has DeAndre Swift in the backfield, he's got 3 great wide receivers like that, plus a good tight end in Cole Kmet. I mean, it's going to be really hard not to succeed. And then you add in his, incredible ability and talent. And if he doesn't have to play hero ball all the time, I could see Caleb Williams being just starting from week 1, really productive for fantasy and also winning games for the Bears. So I think this will be a quick turnaround. I love what they've done to set this up. So at the first overall pick, it's easy, Caleb Williams.
Can't fault you one bit there. That is a good pick. And I think exactly how it should be, picking up the quarterback that goes to a good situation. We touched on, Bryce Young is kind of a bit of a measuring stick for this case of a guy who went to a really bad situation. And I think the more we learn about dynasty and fantasy, etc. Quarterbacks that go to bad situations, don't pick them up in the first year, because right now you can get Bryce Young for very cheap by comparison to what you were able to get him for last year, what you had to draft him at last year. And Caleb Williams, not the case. Love the pick. And I love the landing spot of my number 2 pick here, Marvin Harrison Jr. going to Arizona at pick 5. How can you not want Kyler Murray's number 1 weapon in a wide open offense? Yes, Trey McBride is there, but this easily pushes him to the number 2, which still makes him good for fantasy, because as tight end, we want the 1 or 2 option. He's the number 2 option. We like Michael Wilson. We like some of the other pieces they have there, but it's a bona fide 1 in that offense. I'll take it all day. A nice little vacuum up targets. Yeah. This pick was so hard for me because I basically knew like whatever I picked, I was going to hate whatever came off the board next, because I love both of these picks, 2 and 3. Nate, talk about your 3rd pick here.
Yeah, this 3rd pick, man, this is what we've come up to. We talked about quarterbacks going to maybe not great landing spots. We've always preached talent over situation, but at quarterback, it's hard to stick with that when you look at some of these situations. Like, I love Drake May, but going to the Patriots is not a great situation, especially season 1. There's some development to do there, and there's some development with that team around him as well. So I'm going with J.J. McCarthy with the 3rd pick here, Bob. He's with the Vikings, throwing to Justin Jefferson, throwing to Jordan Addison, who I loved last year and showed off really well this year, even when Jefferson was hurt. And Kevin O'Connell was a great head coach to help develop J.J. McCarthy. He is a winner. He has already been in an NFL program. He's got that mentality. We talk so much about quarterback. Hey, we can watch the film. We can, talk about these guys' arm strength and their athleticism and their ability to read the field. But so much of it comes to what's above the shoulders and what's their mentality. Everything I've seen for JJ fits that for an NFL quarterback to succeed. So I love this landing spot. It's one of the best landing spots for any quarterback next to the Bears. And with JJ getting this spot, the other 2 guys in spots that I don't necessarily love as much for them, JJ is my 3rd overall pick here. We haven't really seen it happen yet, but if this is the reality, I'm okay with it.
I get that there's question marks when it comes to McCarthy's overall production. I get it. I've been a fiend for diving into production over the last couple weeks. If you're in the Discord, you know that I've been just diving into a ton of historical data, and JJ doesn't stack up very well when it comes to that case in terms of the raw production, but he does stack up playing in a very tough, tough competition. He stacks up in that category. And going to Minnesota, I mean, get over your hate for the guy at this point. If they trade up for this pick, he has enough talent, I think, to make this work with the pieces around him. He would have to be terrible to not be good in this system. And I've seen a lot of like Zach Wilson comparisons, and they're just not even close. With the level of competition they faced, production itself, raw production, not similar players, in my opinion. I think it's the pretty boy looks that get people with the comp here. If you want to talk pretty boy comps, we can go that route with JJ and Zach Wilson. But I got my pick, and I was, JJ was easily my next pick in the queue, but I knew you were going to take him. Yeah. And like you just touched on, I don't love these other quarterback landing spots, but I do have, and if I was more confident in the quarterbacks in this class, not saying I don't believe in them entirely, but I do have questions. I don't have questions about the wide receivers in this class. And Malik Neighbors is the pick for me here at pick 6, even though he goes to the New York Giants, to be, for now, Daniel Jones' number 1 weapon. Again, that's with something we've touched on a lot. He gets to be the number 1 vacuum target hog in that offense from day 1. Malik Neighbors is a great prospect, good enough route runner, slippery after the catch, can make a lot happen with the ball in his hands. He is a spark plug, electric playmaker for an offense, albeit it's not a good one to start. Hopefully they can build on that Brian Daboll offense over time. But let's talk about your next pick, Nate. Pick number 5.
Pick number 5. I had to go with the quarterback here, Bob. I love the other wide receiver on the board, but we were talking about it before the show. I don't love this landing spot as much. I'm not downgrading him too much, but Odunze to the Bears doesn't jump out to me as a great landing spot. I think it'll still be fine, but there's obviously some competition there. So for me, going with the positional value here, I'm going with Drake May, who's my quarterback 2 from film. And he's going to the Patriots, which, there's not a lot there to work with. Even in the rest of this draft, they don't really get a lot more talent to put around him. I do think, we have a new look Patriots now. I don't think it's going to be great year 1, but we are moving in a different direction. So with Drake May, he might need some time to develop anyway. He can sit behind Jacoby Brissett. He can grow in that way. He has all the physical talent, to be a guy like Josh Allen, who he's been compared to as a ceiling comp. He has that kind of big arm, that running ability, but there's a lot of mistakes that he makes throughout his film. Maybe he's playing hero ball. Maybe he's just, making some mistakes. We'll have to see what that looks like in New England, but he still has enough talent and raw talent for me to pick him here at the 105. So Drake May to the Patriots, getting a good quarterback who I think can develop and become a good NFL starter moving forward.
Yeah, would have been my next pick here as well if I was in this same position as you. Like the talent enough, but New England, I don't love it. As much as I believe in Drake May, I don't believe in New England at this point, and that is kind of a kicker for me. But I believe in what Chicago's doing at this point, drafting Caleb Williams. They add Rome Odunze here at pick 9, and I get him at pick 6. Happy taking him off the board. I'm siding with the talent here. I know, and if this is the spot, he is going to slide down boards because what are your honest prospecting for this guy or projecting for this guy year one with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen in front of him? As much as we sometimes like to poo-poo on DJ Moore and say, well, he's a better wide receiver 2 than a 1. He did pretty good as a 1 last year. And Keenan Allen, yes, he's aging and getting to that cliff. We know that, but also coming off a career year, nothing to scoff at. When does Rome Odunze really get a shot in this offense? I don't think it's year 1, and I think that kind of sullies people on his draft stock and where they want to pick him. But siding with the talent here over the situation, as much as it's not like one of those bad situations. It's not like a team that we don't know about, and I guess we don't know if Chicago's offense is going to be good, to be fair. But it's not one of those real growth situations. Like, he's going to have a good quarterback at minimum playing, whereas, Drake May, like we just discussed, doesn't really have the pieces around him to throw to or to play off. As much as we'd like Demario Douglas and as much as some people like the player they draft in this draft, not me. I'm happy taking Rome Odunze here, looking at the long-term over the question marks I have at your next pick. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm sad not to have Rome Odunze, to be honest, because he's one of my favorite players in this draft. So I was upset not to get him here, but I'm continuing to pick up the value at quarterback. This is a quarterback that's in a better situation, but I feel less confident about. Jaden Daniels, he's got the talent, but I do have question marks about he's not great against pressure. And that's something that, if you can't translate to the NFL and work against pressure, it's going to be really hard. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks struggle, if they can't figure out what to do when they're under pressure. And he scrambles a lot when he's under pressure, which worked really well in college. But he can't scramble every single time he's under pressure in the NFL. It's just not going to work. It's going to be like RG3 out there. So, Jaden Daniels, he's going to a great landing spot, I think, with that offense. He's got Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler in the backfield to, alleviate some of that pressure on the ground, as well as, giving him some nice dump offs. And he's got Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, who I think is, a pretty good 1-2 punch. But it's an offense. It's a team that is still kind of coming around on their identity. And Jaden Daniels is a great guy to build around, but there's still enough question marks that he dropped this far from me. But I mean, you can't let a guy with this kind of upside go anywhere past the 7th overall pick, because he is just too talented especially with the run game in fantasy football, this Konami code quarterback. If Jaden Daniels is able to translate to the NFL, you're going to be getting a steal here at the 107.
Yeah, absolutely. And oddly enough, just another touch on the Discord, somebody's talking about Jaden Daniels possibly at the 106, and I'm like, I don't think he's going to make it there in a lot of drafts, but here he is making it to the 107. So poo-poo on me for that one, I guess. I do have a quick follow-up question. Let's say Drake May and Jaden Daniels' landing spots got switched. Jaden Daniels to New England, Drake May to Washington. How does that play in this draft for you? Does that change anything are you waiting even longer to draft Daniels? I
would probably be looking at Daniels a similar place here at the 107, but maybe going Brock Bowers if I need a tight end, especially if it's tight end premium. With Drake May going to the Commanders in a better offense, I would have Drake May up there with JJ in contention for that 3rd overall pick, to be quite honest, because I do like Drake May a bit more just talent-wise than JJ McCarthy. But it would be pretty close, because I do think that JJ is just going to be a winner at the next level. I know it's, don't want to say like, oh, he's just a gamer, he's going to be good at the next level. But I mean, he's a winner. He's been a winner at every single level. And, at the quarterback position, so much of it is mentality. And he's got all the ability. He just hasn't had the chance to really show it at a high clip.
They say winners win. at the end
Winners
of the
win.
day. So that's what makes them winners. So, and that is maybe a Michael Scott original. If it's not, it should be. But moving on to the next pick here, I passed on an elite talent at a position because I think we got an elite landing spot with a good enough player that would make this pick really special. So I'm leaving some value on the board again for you, Nate. And that's what I like to do in these drafts when I'm drafting with you. I like to just let you gobble up values.
I love that.
And then later I make all the adult picks that like, well, this guy should have been drafted by now. So you get to have all the fun. I make the adult picks later. It's how it works out with these. But I took Brian Thomas with this pick, who went to Buffalo. Like I said, one of the elite landing spots, especially for a wide receiver, slots in to be the wide receiver one in that offense. And while I don't love that year one, and I've definitely been one to poo-poo on Brian Thomas. I don't love the 30-year breakout.
A little surprised by this.
I don't love the 30-year breakout, especially when we saw Malik Neighbors do pretty well last year in 2022, albeit in a sputtering LSU offense. That anybody watching tape that year knows that offense was not as good as it was this previous year. Water is wet. Maybe are up for discussion. Actually, I won't use that phrasing, but I'm happy taking him here over the tight end value, assuming this is not a tight end premium, because at the end of the day, as much as I love Brock Bowers and his production profile is elite, dove into 154 tight ends, tell me that his profile is elite, and tight ends are boring to look into, by the way. But I'm happy taking Brian Thomas here with the question marks I have, still there, but he's still a young player, freak athlete, freak prospect overall, going to an elite landing spot. Whether or not I love him here, this is where he's going to come off boards. And like I said, sometimes there has to be an adult in the parent relationship. So I took him here. I love the value on the board for you, Nate.
So much value here at the 109. If I was sitting like the 111 needed a
good draft,
end, I would be trying to trade up to this point when the 109's in the clock, trying to get Brock Bowers, see what I could do. Because Brock Bowers to the Jets, there's Garrett Wilson, and there's nobody else in that offense to catch passes outside of Breece Hall out of the backfield. So Brock Bowers.
How dare you leave Mike Williams out of discussions like that?
I got to see Mike Williams on the field before I assume he's catching passes.
Touche.
So Brock Bowers, we talked about, we want a tight end who's the 1 or 2 in an offense. He's the 2 in this offense quite easily, and he will be for a while. And I know Aaron Rodgers, what's he going to do long-term? I don't know, but I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and be able to support Garrett Wilson and a Brock Bowers offense and let Brock Bowers in his first season probably hit 1,000 yards. And I don't think this is a bad landing spot. I like this landing spot. Maybe long-term, you're going to get some ups and downs once they have to move on from Rodgers and figure something out. But for year one production, you're going to have a top 5 rookie season out of Brock Bowers in this situation, especially a team that's trying to go to the playoffs. They're going to be working to get him the ball. This is an investment to make Rodgers happy. This is an investment to make their offense better. Brock Bowers is going to be an integral piece of that. And I think at the 109, you're getting a really, really good player who is probably going to put up better stats than Brian Thomas Jr. in their first season. And you get it at the tight end position, you're getting that advantage. I love this pick, Bob. Thank you so much for leaving this on the board for me.
I don't think you would see, because where's that offense running through in Buffalo, if not through Brian Thomas?
Joe Brady does not like to give one wide receiver all of the stats. So you're going to see Brian Thomas Jr. out there, and you're going to be so frustrated because Khalil Shakir is going to be getting stuff, Curtis Samuel is going to be getting stuff, Dalton Kincaid is going to be getting stuff, and you're going to have 4 guys that are involved in this offense. And this offense, the Buffalo offense can definitely kill it, but between 4 guys, I don't think Brian Thomas is getting 1,000 yards in this situation. I think you're probably looking at like 700, 800 yards in this situation. I think Brock Bowers being the number 2 and not too much competition after that, I think you could see him get 900, maybe 1,000 yards.
Moving on to the next pick here, I got pick 10. I'll agree to disagree on Brock Bowers versus Brian Thomas year one in those landing spots. And New York, like you said, I can't get excited about New York Jets landing spot. I don't know, just that franchise in general, but a franchise that does have its poop together. That'd be Kansas City going at 32, snagging Adonai Mitchell. As much as I don't love Adonai Mitchell, because if there's anything that I've learned in these diving into production of almost 600 players at this point, is that players that struggle to be, or that are very inefficient with their touches in terms of yards per reception, in Adonai Mitchell's case, yak rec, yards per route run, those players don't do well at the next level. They're usually feeding off of volume as opposed to their actual skill set. They're just kind of a benefactor of being there. And as much as I don't love Adonai Mitchell at this point, if he goes to Kansas City, I mean, isn't he probably in discussions with the last two picks we've just had?
Absolutely.
I mean, and for how, it definitely seems like people are very hot and cold on Adonai Mitchell. And I would say more people are hot than cold.
That's without he tested.
Especially with how he tested. I mean, just a freak athlete, 100%. Nothing to debate there. Again, another later breakout, didn't break out to a huge effect, had a nice amount of touchdowns, but in the grand scheme of things, production, albeit in, going from Georgia, who no wide receivers really did great coming from Georgia in a production profile landscape, but coming from Georgia and then going to Texas, as much as we like to poo-poo on Xavier Worthy, and that's a phrase I've been using way too much in this episode, a guy who is consistently productive, is also very athletic, and produce all 3 years. Whereas Adonai Mitchell, yes, winding road, I get it, but Kansas City landing spot, nobody cares. But I think this is one of the traps I think that will be set on draft day if this pick happens. This is a pick I will not be making personally, but again, playing the adult and picking a player who would have come off the board possibly in the last 2 picks. Feel free to share your thoughts or dive into your next pick, Nate.
Well, speaking of wide receivers coming from Georgia who don't have great production profiles, I went with Ladd McConkey at my next pick, going to the Panthers in the 33rd overall pick, so the first pick of the second round. Hey, Bryce Young's wide receiver 1. Deontay is there. So Ladd McConkey, maybe the wide receiver 1 of the future, we'll see. But I think those two are a really interesting pairing because I've actually comped Ladd McConkey to Deontay Johnson before. So you might have a little bit of 2 wide receivers who kind of do the same thing. I don't know if Dane was taking that into account or maybe going for that kind of compliment there. But either way, both these guys are really good at getting open, and that is what the Panthers need more than anything else. That's what Bryce Young needs more than anything else, because when he had guys that got open at Alabama, he was able to find them. He was able to extend plays and make things happen. No one could get open last year for Carolina. So I think in this situation, you're going to see Deontay and Ladd McConkey both get a ton of targets because after them, Adam Thielen is still there, but he's got to be declining at this point. I mean, we saw him start off the season really strongly last year. He declined throughout the season. He's another year older. I can't imagine him being too much more than the wide receiver 3 in this position. So they don't have much there at tight end either. So you have 2 wide receivers at the top. You're going to be getting the overwhelming majority of these targets. I think Ladd would be very productive in this situation. His efficiency stats when he was on the field at Georgia were just so good. Such a good route runner, so good at creating yards after the catch as well. I love Ladd McConkey. I'm all about him in the first round, and being the first wide receiver in the second round locks it in for me. I'm picking him up here at the 111.
Yeah, I like it a good bit as well. And I think, like you touched on, wide receivers down the stretch last year for Carolina didn't get open. So what have they done so far? If this pick comes to fruition, they had a wide receiver that can get open. They added Deontay Johnson, a wide receiver who can get the F open to help complement Bryce Young. And that's why we didn't, that's why we saw a lot of dip in Bryce Young's value. So if this were to happen, if they're, take the Jordan Love approach and get a lot of weapons for the guy.
And they did. They did in this draft. And I think I drafted like 3 different Panthers.
All of them.
So I'm all in on the Panthers offense if this is what happens.
I was going to make a comment at some point that you took a lot of Panthers players in this draft, but
I'm a Bryce Young believer.
It is what it is. Hey, and for what it's worth, they're all pretty good players and players I like.
They are. Yeah, they drafted well.
To wrap out this first round, I'm going with an old friend, Troy Franklin, who went to the Jaguars at pick 48 here, making it into the top 50 of NFL draft picks, always a good sign. And, fills a void in this offense. As much as I think the Gabe Davis move is interesting to Jacksonville, Troy Franklin, ultimately, in my opinion, is better. I think he's capped by that size in terms of, we thought he was going to come in almost 20 pounds heavier than he did. Not the case. Looked a little bulkier, but came in a lot lighter than we thought, but in that tall, slim Reaper to a T build. But in this offense, I think he fills a void in a wide receiver 2-ish role, probably in the offense. And if there's anything I like about this draft a lot, and I think especially in the later rounds, Dane, shout out Dane Bruglar, the mock draft, the creator of the mock that we're drafting from, did a really good job of finding complementary pieces for offenses, whether it be running back, wide receiver, tight end, and fitting these guys into perfect little slots that I think would do really well. I think Troy Franklin fills a role, and I think he gets in a role with a good quarterback in an ascending-ish offense. I'd be pretty excited about this landing spot. They pass on wide receiver in the first, go get one in the second, albeit probably not a wide receiver one like I mentioned. But either which way, that caps off the first round. And real quick, dive into some players that are left on the board. Nate, you have a rule. First round quarterbacks don't leave the first round of NFL drafts or rookie drafts, but one did here. Michael Penix, the lone survivor of the first round, making it through. Keon Coleman, Chargers 37. Xavier Worthy going to the Saints at 45. Ricky Pearsall going to the Colts at 46. Bo Nix to the Rams at 52. Tavion Sanders to the Dolphins at 55. Xavier Legette to the Ravens at 62. Jonathan Brooks to the Panthers. I wonder who's going to draft him. And then we got Malachi Corley going to the Patriots in round 3 to start off that round. And we got, there's a handful of other guys going too. Blake Corum to the Chargers, 69, prophecy pick there. Trey Benson to the Giants at pick 70. Jalen Polk to the Lions at pick 73. Spencer Rattler to the Broncos at 76. Nate, why don't you kick off this second round with your first pick? Who do you got?
All right, my first pick in the second round, my second Panther I'm picking up Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks, we're getting the second round. I want my running back. We didn't get the prophesized Jonathan Brooks to Dallas Cowboys pick that everyone loves. But the Panthers, hey, I'm buying into this is an ascending offense with the picks that they've made in this mock draft. We see a mindset of, hey, we're going to invest into our offense. The competition there right now, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, that gives Jonathan Brooks some time to ease back into playing time if he needs it. And if he doesn't, he can outplay either one of those guys pretty easily, I do think. So Jonathan Brooks being the RB1 for this offense, which depending on how Bryce Young does, Jonathan Brooks might need to really, be a major part of this offense rather quickly. So I think there's opportunity here, a nice floor, but also a pretty high ceiling depending on, how quickly this passing game can come along, especially if they still, only have like 2 good wide receivers, a tight end. If they don't have a full offense, Jonathan Brooks should have more opportunity. I'm excited for what he can do in a role where they look like they could give him a pretty full workload here in Carolina.
Chuba Hubbard truthers be damned on this one, I guess.
No, sorry.
Great producer in college. Did not live up to the NFL yet. Maybe there's a chance, but I don't hate this
college
pick.
An extra year. Shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us, I guess. But I don't hate the pick. I like the player a lot. I think that, the Panthers landing spot isn't as fun for me. But I would have been looking at him sooner rather than later.
That's why he wasn't a first rounder like he oftentimes is in our mock drafts.
Yep, that's fair enough. And this is where, being the adult in the draft comes into play. I had to take the value of the first round quarterback, even though I don't love the player. I took Michael Penix Jr. here, who went to Las Vegas at pick 29 in the first round. And as much as I don't love Michael Penix, how long is he not the quarterback of this team? Do I think it's week 1? No. Do I think it's week 2? Maybe, depending how things go, especially with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell ahead of him. How far down in the pecking order is he? He's a first-round pick on a team that is, in flux, to say the least at this point. They're not a strong competitor. They're, not rebuilding. They're kind of in the middle of the row and choosing to stay there. But Michael Penix, hey, could be the start of something new. At this point in drafts, I think the second he's a starter, I'm flipping him for more because I don't believe in Michael Penix that much. At this point in drafts, I'll take the value as it's given and go from there and kick it to you with your next pick. A fun little player, interesting landing spot as well.
I was excited for this pick. I thought you might be picking him up, but you made the adult pick here, Bob. So congrats to you. You get to miss out on Xavier Worthy at the 203, going to the Saints across from Chris Olave. You got a pretty good 1-2 punch here. I don't know exactly how those two players are going to work off each other. They both have the ability to stretch the field. They both have the ability to create some yards after the catch as well. I think Xavier Worthy, this is an interesting landing spot because I think you got a quarterback that could make good use of Xavier Worthy, and you got an offense where there isn't a ton of targets outside of Chris Olave. So there's a lot of potential here. I don't necessarily believe in the Saints overall as, a really strong offense, a really strong organization right now with their current setup. But Xavier Worthy, with this kind of investment at the 45th overall pick and going to a pretty wide open wide receiver room, the production that he had, the speed that he's shown off. My only question mark with Worthy is the drops, and he's going to have every opportunity to make that better in this offense. So at the 203, you can't really pass on the upside that Xavier Worthy brings to the table.
Since you brought up the drops, I need to bring up something with you, Nathaniel.
All right.
Looking at Xavier Worthy versus Brian Thomas, who also had a good number of drops. Why are the drops a concern for Worthy, but not for old buddy Brian Thomas? So let's take a gander. Let's take a gander at this. On a career 335 targets, Xavier Worthy had 15 drops. All right, so that's a lot of targets to have 15 drops on. Brian Thomas, however, there's a lot of Brian Thomases. Give me a second. There he is. It's a pretty common name, believe it or not. Had 176 targets with 13 drops. So 2 less drops, but like almost double the targets or half the targets Xavier Worthy had. Yeah. So like, why is it such a discussion with Worthy, but not Brian Thomas, who I drafted much earlier?
So one thing is the situations where these drops happen are different. Brian Thomas Jr., a lot of his drops would come in more contested catch situations, in situations where the corner is able to, put more of an effort into it than Worthy, where a lot of his drops have come where he is untouched. He is 3, 4, 5 yards away from the nearest defender. He's either down the field and he's dropping the ball over the shoulder, which it's a hard catch, but to make it to the NFL, you got to make that catch consistently if you're going to stretch the field. Or it's against Alabama, making the little cut, and they're on the 5-yard line. He's going out to the pylon. There's no one near him. It's a wide open touchdown, hits both of his hands, falls off. It's just those drops in those big moments when he has the big plays and he's wide open, and they're just concentration drops. It's not that, the defender played a really good play, or, it's just a hard situation. They're just the drops that you just can't make at the next level because coaches just won't put you in. Quarterbacks won't throw you the ball. And those drops, they're just worrying. They can be fixed. They can definitely be fixed. But he has improved every single year. I believe if you look at his drop percentage, it has improved over the past 2 or 3 years. Watching the film this year, the Alabama drop in the end zone, it just really shows the issue. And you can't have those drops at the next level.
Yeah. To touch on his drop percentage, so 4.6 as a freshman, 10.6 in 2022. He was dealing with a broken hand. Whether that played a huge role, who knows? And then back down to 6.3. So I think overall his career-wise is still pretty good, and career-wise lower than Brian Thomas's. So I'm just throwing it out there to say the least. But I had to ask since you brought it up. I think it's a good question. I still love the pick. I love this pairing. Xavier Worthy going to play alongside Chris Olave. I think they help each other a lot. I think they can both be used in a variety of ways too. I don't think either one is necessarily pigeonholed into one role. I think they can both play deep. I think they can both play short, take some easy stuff. I'd be really excited about this landing spot. And another landing spot I'm kind of excited about. Everybody likes to throw out, Matthew Stafford's going to retire soon. And it's like, well, maybe Bo Nix will still be playing in the league when that happens, being an older prospect himself. But I took Bo Nix off the board here, going to the Rams in the second round. And I do feel like this is early a little bit, but I wanted to get Bo Nix on my roster because I love the spot. Because getting to be in a Sean McVay offense with the weapons he has, Cooper Kupp isn't going to be there forever, albeit, Kyren Williams, who knows what's going to happen with him. But locked into Puka Nacua, locked into that offensive guru of a head coach and Sean McVay. I want every piece of it. And yes, I feel like I probably could have waited on this one. I was torn between this and another couple picks. I got to pick up one of the players with my next pick. But either which way, this is an exciting spot. And I think definitely can get him later because unless I happen to be my rationale for this pick was I'm the 204. If this is my pick, I'm already building team. I'm maybe not really looking to compete yet. Quarterback is almost always an issue. And either which way, this is some estate planning for me. If I'm one of those that really believe that Matthew Stafford's going to call it quits anytime soon, if you saw him in the playoffs, he looked outstanding. I mean, looked like prime Matthew Stafford again. I'm not ruling him out anytime soon, but I'm also not going to rule him in for playing another 5 years. So I'm going to take Bo Nix here and do some estate planning for future teams. Since I didn't really love the wide receiver pool that I'm looking at, running back is kind of the value at this point. If Xavier Worthy was still here, probably the pick I'd be making. But alas, he's not. Nate, go ahead, touch on your next pick.
So now we get to the running backs, Bob. This is where the value of the running backs is in the mid-second. This is where we get to the run. And I started off with Trey Benson going to the Giants in the third round. It's a pretty great landing spot. he's going to get a bulk of the opportunity here. Devin Singletary is there, and we know Devin Singletary is going to get his opportunities because
Mm-hmm.
wherever he goes, he always does. But
Mm-hmm.
I think him and Trey Benson are going to be a good 1-2 punch. Devin Singletary can, take some of that receiving work in the beginning, that pass blocking, and let Benson just kind of work in that offense on the ground, break off those big plays that he's known for, use his athleticism, use his speed, and then grow as a receiver as well. And once he has that, we've seen how the Giants have used Barkley. Benson's not Barkley, but if he gets any kind of workload similar to that, where he's getting a lot of touches on the ground, a lot of touches through the air as well, then you have a lot of volume, and that leads to a lot of fantasy points, especially with Trey Benson's home run ability, his ability to take anything and make a big play out of it. The Giants desperately need that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a pretty good landing spot where he's going to get his very early on. And at running back, what more can you ask for than volume from the beginning?
I'm glad you put respect on Devin Singletary's name with this pick, because everywhere he's gone, all he's done is nab work. Yep. And I think he still would, even I think it's another one of those timeshare running back rooms where, hey, it's a clear committee and that's okay. You're not going to get that elite running back pop number from either of them. But hey, both could be somewhat viable week to week in a flex role on your own team. And a player who I love, a prophecy pick here, Blake Corum, going to the Chargers at pick 69. Nice. Running back out of Michigan, one of probably the best vision in the class and one of the best overall producers in this class. Crazy elite rushing numbers, crazy elite touchdown numbers against the top competition that you can get. Stud running back, goes through a great situation where he is going to get utilized in that offense. I don't care Gus Edwards is there. I don't care J.K. Dobbins just signed. Blake Corum is going to get work, especially being a third-round pick. He's going to get work in this offense sooner rather than later. This landing spot, in general, even just draft capital, Blake Corum this early, at his size, and athletic profile is good enough for me. I still think he's quicker than fast, but fast in bursts is needed. I love this spot, and I'm happy picking up Blake Corum here as a team that was 206 on the fringe of being really competitive. I think Blake Corum could be in that Ravens West, Michigan West, not Western Michigan, Michigan West style offense that Harbaugh and Greg Roman are going to implement.
Yep.
I'm all about this pick here, and I hate that you took the next player off the board, but hey, can't always get what you want. But they say you get what you need. What do you need at this pick, Nate?
And the value is what I need, Bob. Value is what I need. And Jalen Wright falling down the board, another running back, mid-second. We're picking up the running backs here. They get day 2 draft capital. I'm picking them up in the second round as soon as I can, basically. So Jalen Wright here to the Cowboys. I'm not the biggest Jalen Wright fan, but when your running back room competition is Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle, my boy, Malik Davis, and Royce Freeman, I think Jalen Wright will be okay. I think Jalen Wright will get volume. And he also has that home run threat that Trey Benson also has. I think Jalen Wright worries me a little bit. I don't know if his running inside the tackles against heavier boxes as well. He faced a single-digit amount of heavy boxes while he was at Tennessee this past season. So he's used to running against light boxes. I'm not sure he's going to get as much of that with the Cowboys, but he has that home run threat where if he gets outside, he can break off big plays. He can be used as a receiver. He can be used in a multitude of different ways. And with this backfield, you might actually see workhorse kind of volume off the get-go. Depending on what else they do the rest of this draft, or maybe they bring someone in, a veteran closer to training camp. I'm not sure, but this is obviously a really good landing spot. Offensive line isn't quite what it used to be for Dallas, but still, that we know they like to give the ball to one running back and make it happen from there. So,
yeah, I like the pick a lot, and I can't wait for whoever the Cowboys draft at running back to all of a sudden be the best running back in the draft, because I foresee that when it happens, when they inevitably draft a running back, all the worries will wash away from whatever running back is drafted. But hey, I'll see what happens when it happens. And another pick here, I don't love the pick because there's another tight end I like in this class a little better.
I feel like you don't love half your picks.
I never do, Nate. It's always stressful. But here, with this one, I feel like he'd be coming off the board for a lot of teams, and that's because the exciting landing spot that is the Miami Dolphins taking Jatavion Sanders, tight end, off the board here. Huge gap between tight end picks here, and I think that's what we're typically in drafts, tight ends, whether they should or shouldn't, and honestly, in my opinion, they probably shouldn't. but tight ends will always creep up the board. And especially in this draft where there is a lot of great running back value to be had, I think, in the top half of the second round, especially. Like we said way back when we were talking about this running back class, one of two things is going to happen. Either running backs are going to get drafted earlier than people think, and they're going to rise up into the late first, or they're going to stay where they're at, and you're going to get great running back value in the second round from day two running backs. How many will be day two running backs? Who knows? We'll see what happens. Check out the live streams, and you'll find out what we think about them, but in live-ish action. But that said, taking Ja'Tavion Sanders here, who gets to just kind of be in, single coverage all the time in the middle of the field, having Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill run around him. And how are you going to stop Ja'Tavion
Good
Sanders?
situation.
If they choose to utilize him as more than just a run blocker, which I think he can be used in this offense, get him involved in screen game, short screens, etc., Sanders is going to be a great dump off option, run after catch king, yards after catch king. You get it. But I made this pick here. You took one of your guys who I was kind of had my eyes on a little bit here, but I like the pick all the same. What do you got with your next one?
My boy Marshawn Lloyd got locked into day two draft capital, Bob. And with that, we're picking him up here at the 9th pick in the second round. Going to the Arizona Cardinals at the 90th overall pick. I like the pairing of James Conner and Marshawn Lloyd a lot. I think they're going to be a nice 1-2 punch. It lets Lloyd kind of work his way into this offense, let him be efficient with his touches because he is an explosive player, and also puts a veteran ahead of him that doesn't probably have too much time left on the field, especially with the Cardinals. I believe this is the last year of his deal. So this also puts us in place for, hey, does Marshawn Lloyd have a decent season here as a rookie, and then maybe expand upon that going into season 2 and beyond. So, we have the immediate production with Marshawn Lloyd in this spot because I do think he'll be used to spell James Conner if this was the pick, and he could definitely be used on receiving downs to give them some more explosiveness on those downs, and then also gives us the upside moving forward that, hey, we have a day 2 running back that is going to be giving a good amount of that backfield. And like we say, there's not many workhorses out there anymore. I'm sure if Marshawn Lloyd was the starting running back next year for the Cardinals, they'd also probably bring in some other competition for him. But maybe it's not another day 2 pick. Maybe it's a day 3 pick at that point. I think Marshawn Lloyd, his ability, his explosiveness that he's shown on both the ground and through the air, this is a great spot for him to be with Kyler Murray, learn under James Conner, and grow from there.
Yeah, love the pick, and to confirm, it is James Conner last year on his contract. So yeah, I love the pick, love the landing spot. I think, you're getting, even a similar faceted running back who can kind of do both things.
Yeah.
With a ton of opportunity ahead of him. Like you said, I think Conner is still probably the primary carrier this year, but over time, we've seen a lot of running backs kind of take that year to not a red shirt year, but kind of a sit and learn year, or a year where they're lightly utilized, and let these older running backs kind of churn out the rest of their career. And hey, Marshawn Lloyd to find himself in a similar situation. And the Chargers, I got bones to pick with because they decided, hey, that wide receiver we drafted in the first round last year, let's draft somebody of similar red flaggedness. Go pick up Keon Coleman at pick 37. And I know we are not the Keon Coleman people here at this channel, and I apologize. Just have a lot of, concerns with his game as a pure route runner. I think he's a lot of all speed, no control, lacks a lot of finesse as a route runner.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, a fairly decent athlete, but again, without that finesse, you can struggle as a wide receiver. You're when you're playing that more athletic than wide receiver. We throw out the adage with running backs a ton, but we do see it with Keon Coleman. And in the comments a couple weeks back, mentioned that he had the fastest speed in the gauntlet drill, and it's like, yeah, he had the fastest speed in the gauntlet drill, and he also ran 6 yards out of bounds at the end of the drill when you're supposed to turn. It's like you can't throttle down. I just don't know what you're looking at there, but I'm taking it because I know he'd be taken at this point, because with how everybody hates Quentin Johnson at this point, and they draft him at pick 37, a top 50 pick.
Yeah,
he's off the board again, having to play the adult, make all the boring picks. But the next pick, I went with my heart. The heart wants what it wants, and it got what it got. But first, you went with a pick. A decent one, an interesting one. I was kind of interested to see this guy come off as early as he did. Why don't you talk about it? Talk about your next pick to round out the second, or then I'll talk about my pick to round out the second. What do you got here?
All right. It might be a homer pick here, but I went with Xavier Legette, going number 62 overall to the Ravens. Being the wide receiver 2 there, maybe across from Zay Flowers. Bateman is on the last year of his contract. They haven't announced if they're going to be picking up his 5th-year option or not yet. I could see it honestly going either way, but it's going to be pretty expensive for a wide receiver who hasn't done much at this moment, as much as we all love Rashad Bateman still in Baltimore. But Xavier Legette comes in here, and despite the 5th-year breakout, which is definitely a red flag, we talk about it quite a bit. But if you watch the film, you look at the stats from this year, Xavier Legette is a top wide receiver. I mean, he won in contested catch situations. He was able to create lots of yards after the catch. He's grown a lot as a route runner. Not quite a true technician at this point, but for his size, he runs routes pretty well. And I would like to see what he could do with the Ravens not having, we've seen guys like this, these size speed combo guys go in the first round, go early in the second. And then there's a lot of expectation for these guys, and they just can't live up to the hype. Quentin Johnson last year was not ready for the expectations that were placed on him his rookie season. The first-round draft capital was a little much. With Xavier Legette going at the back part of the second round, I feel like the expectations are not so much. He doesn't have to walk in as a wide receiver one. Zay Flowers is there. Andrews is there. Bateman's still there for another year at least. Gives him some room to continue that transition, continue to develop. He's been a little bit of a late bloomer. This allows him to have that extra little bit of time to develop, find himself what he's going to be at the next level. And also with Zay Flowers' versatility to play inside and outside, this will also allow for Xavier Legette to also play inside-outside, which could be really beneficial, especially for his development, as we see a guy that can maybe start off in the slot and then move outside.
I mean, at this point, honestly, I don't hate it as much as I don't love the 5th-year breakout. I did like what I saw on film.
Yeah.
And he is one of a handful of players in this class where I can say that, yes, all of these things are screaming a red flag at me. The fact that he just every single year, and yes, he has every excuse under the sun. Brett Coleman ran through all of the reasons why, he didn't see as much time playing. He had a lot of personal issues going on in his life. Not, faulting the guy for it at all, but, to see what he did this last season was impressive. What he put on film was good, to say the least. So I'm, at this point in drafts,
exactly,
I can't hate it.
Not a ton of investment here with the late second, but all the upside in the world, because if Xavier Legette plays the way he played his 5th year at South Carolina and he can translate that to the NFL, you're getting a late first value at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, easily. And if this was your pick, and you're on the cusp of a championship run anyway, this is kind of possibly house money. If you're drafting here with this pick, you're playing with house money. If you want something more legit that can help you win now, go trade this pick for something else. And if you want to know what to trade that pick for, go check out our recent What We Trade Every First and Second Round Pick for video. But like I said, I went with my heart on this pick, and a player I love went to the Chiefs. It's going to be interesting to see how this running back plays with another running back that's there, but I think he would be a good, I don't want to say lightning, because I think Isaiah Pacheco might be faster than Bucky Irving, but Bucky Irving is certainly quicker, I think, than Isaiah Pacheco, and he has the receiving ability, which I think would play huge in this offense. He would be able to slot in, taking over the Jerick McKinnon role and what they wanted Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be. That's kind of my hope and pray for Bucky Irving at this point. But going to the Chiefs, a running back, Isaiah Pacheco has 2 more years left on his deal. Who knows if they end up, re-signing him, extending him, etc. Not going to play that game with this pick, but the heart wants what the heart wants, and the heart got what it needed at this pick. And then it got stabbed in the face with the next pick. But to recap quick, let's talk about some players left on the board. We got Ricky Pearsall, who went to the Colts at 46. We got Roman Wilson, who went to the Steelers at pick 51. And then we got Malachi Corley to the Patriots, Jalen Polk to the Lions, Spencer Rattler to the Broncos, Devontae Walker to the Falcons, Theo Johnson went to the Bengals, Jermaine Burton went to the Rams, Jared Wiley to the 49ers, and Brendan Rice to the Commanders. And then that rounds out day 2. Looking at round 4, we had Ben Sinnott go to the Panthers. I wonder who's going to draft that guy. Michael Pratt go to the Giants, Malik Washington go to the Jets, Braylon Allen to the Raiders, Jalen McMillan go to the Eagles, Cade Stover going to the Broncos, Audric Esme to the Buccaneers, Ray Davis to my Packers, Will Shipley going to the Texans, Javon Baker going to the Bills, Luke McCaffrey going to the 49ers to wrap out round 4. You got the 301. You decided to choose violence with this pick, Nate. You did it.
With the 201, I picked a Panther. With the 301, picking up another Panther. I got Ben Sinnott here, or Ben Sinnott. Ben Sinnott, one of my favorite tight ends in this draft class. My tight end too. and he doesn't get the day 2 draft capital, which I feel pretty strongly he's going to get. I don't think there's any way he lasts until day 3 with how the NFL is currently valuing the tight end position. After what we saw them do last year, I don't think there's any way he makes it this far. But he goes to the Panthers. They need weapons. They need a tight end. They're getting all these different weapons for Bryce Young. I like this new look offense. We saw what the Packers did when they invested heavily into an offense around Jordan Love. That offense turned around quick, and now it's exciting and has a bunch of young players with talent. I think the Panthers could do something similar with the draft they put together. Ben Sinnott is one of my favorite players because of his ability to create yards after the catch. He is an incredible blocker. He plays with such physicality every single play, and his athleticism is also off the charts. One of the best tested tight ends this year in the class. So picking him up at the 301, I think, is a great steal. I'd consider him in the late second, no problem as well. I think, looking at the wide receivers there, the tight end, Ben Sinnott and Jatavion Sanders, the running backs there, I think I have them all kind of in the same tier. So I'm happy to pick them up here at the beginning of the third.
There is no way that you look at last year's tight end class that was drafted day 2 and then compare it to this year's tight end class that went all over the place, and you don't see Ben Sinnott at round 2, in my opinion.
Too many Sam Laporta vibes.
For the blocking alone that this guy puts on film, I mean, one of the top blockers at his position in college this last season. It shows on film. And then he has the receiving repertoire on top. I mean, and played against better competition than I think people give Kansas State credit for.
Yeah.
It checks out. And I think, yes, I waited on him because I didn't like the fourth round draft capital. As much as I hate it, I went with Bucky Irving, but hey, running back over tight end always, just about, except when it's Jatavion Sanders over Marshawn Lloyd, I guess, and also Bucky Irving. But moving along, I went tight end at this pick too, because I think there's a nice kind of sleeper, probably now that everybody's come around to Ben Sinnott. It's time to look for the next sleeper of this class. And I think that might be Theo Johnson, coming out of Penn State, a blue blood program for providing tight ends to the NFL. Goes to the Bengals at pick 80, a day 2 pick. Bengals offense, does a tight end really do much there? Do we know? Because we haven't had a really good tight end go there yet. But I know this will be a coveted position in drafts, to say the least. So I think ultimately Theo Johnson put together decent enough production at Penn State, very quietly, albeit, puts enough on film, good enough blocker, good enough receiver. I think he can do it with a good landing spot like this. I think he gets propelled up boards rather quickly. So I'm happy taking him here at the top of the third and kicking it to you with your pick following up this one. Another good player, but hey, this is one that I like the role that Dane put this player into.
Yeah.
We are on a first name basis, Dane and I. So Dane Bruglar. Mr. Bruglar is what I should call him. But put this player into a nice situation. And honestly, I think he's a better wide receiver too than what's already there.
Yeah. I think what his role would be Jalen Polk going to the Lions with the 73rd overall pick. His role as the X receiver there, with Jameson playing the Z and Amon-Ra St. Brown playing in the slot. It's a nice 1-2-3 punch there. That's a nice 3 wide receivers. But I think for fantasy football, Polk might be a better play at that point than Williams. Jared Goff is an incredible quarterback for fantasy football. He scores well himself. He's able to, support wide receivers and tight ends to be good in fantasy as well. And I think Polk, maybe he doesn't have quite the potential because Amon-Ra St. Brown is there. Sam Laporta is there. At best, he's the 3rd in this offense. I love what he puts on tape. He's one of my favorite players, honestly, in this draft, just because he does everything really well. There's not really anything he does at an elite level, but everything he does is really solid and pro ready. And he just seems like a good Lion as well. Seems like someone Dan Campbell's really going to like. I really like this pick, both for the NFL, also for fantasy. I think in the 3rd round, picking up a guy like Polk, who I think talent-wise is undervalued right now. You're getting a good player. You're getting the upside that he brings to the table as well in this offense. And all for the cost of a 303. I am so excited to buy some thirds, Bob, because I like the talent that we're getting here in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I will say I think this mock draft has been pretty kind to us for fantasy. I think we are in for a reckoning when we get to the draft, and it's actually much worse than
this. This is a good running back mock draft.
I agree,
That's what
which is
changed the
nice.
game, because the last one we
Nice
did
to
was
see.
not good for running backs.
That's a good point. That's a good point. We saw a ton of day 3 running backs, but
Mhm.
love this pick. I've said it on record plenty of times that Jalen Polk will fight somebody for the ball. Some of the best hands in the class, some of the best spectacular catches in the draft. Your draw will hit the floor when you watch this guy make some spectacular. Go check out his highlight reel. Go check out his film. It's littered. You won't be able to tell the difference between the two film reels that you get a hold of. But with that pick on the board, another one of those picks where it feels like you already kind of got this at home, but why not go to the store, go get it? The Raiders pick up Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, good old Wisconsin running back, goes to the Raiders. And I don't think that in round 4, I don't think that as much as I like the upside of Zamir White at this point, I don't think he holds off what Braylon Allen is. The new hotness, hasn't dealt with a series of injuries in college. He's been relatively healthy, fresh coming into the league. Yes, he's had a good number of carries, but not like hundreds and hundreds of carries per season like some running backs have in the past. Super young coming out of the league. As much as I like Zamir White, like I said, I think Braylon Allen can take over this role. I think he's just that little bit of a, not to trash talk Trans Ams, but Zamir White's the Trans Am that you got in the little shed out back, and then Braylon Allen's that spicy Chevy Corvette that you bring rolling in fresh out the shop. That's a pretty
Maybe
poor
just have
car
two
reference,
Trans
but
Ams.
hey,
Maybe just have two Trans Ams.
hey, watch it. This Trans Am can catch. The other one can't. Just kidding. Neither one can. They need a running back that could actually catch the ball, but maybe that's whatever. But either which way, moving on from poor car, whatever
Tread on the
metaphors,
tires, something.
something tires and tread. But I would say Braylon Allen has more tread left on the tires than Zamir White does with his lack of ACLs. But fun pick here. I think this is an upgrade for this team as well at their wide receiver 2-3 position, but it could be fun for fantasy. What do you got at this next pick, Nate?
Yep. We have day 2, second round wide receivers going off the board here in a row. I got the first of the last 2, and I got Ricky Pearsall going to the Colts. I honestly don't love the landing spot a ton. I like Ricky Pearsall. He can play outside, he can play inside, but you already have Michael Pittman Jr., you already have Downs. I feel like everyone has been talking about how the Colts need to draft another wide receiver early, but Alec Pierce is so good at playing that wide receiver 3 deep stretch role. I don't know why they necessarily need to go get somebody as much as they're saying, but if Ricky Pearsall does go there, I think he gives legitimate competition to Josh Downs for that wide receiver 2 role in the Colts. I know, Bob, it's tough. That's why I don't like this. I wish Josh Downs could just be the wide receiver 2 and not have any real competition for it. But I've become a Ricky Pearsall fan. I've been watching the film, and he's just grown on me because of his ability to catch the ball and just secure it through contact. There's been many catches that he's made where, number one, he shouldn't even be able to get the hand on the ball, and then he does, and he's able to secure it through contact across the middle of the field. NFL teams are going to love that, to feel safe throwing to him no matter where he's on the field. He has enough speed to stretch the defense as well. He's a great route runner. Ricky Pearsall can really do it all. And while I might not have him as a top 50 wide receiver with this wide receiver class, maybe he's there. He is pretty good. So going to the Colts, I'm a little worried about the overall volume with Michael Pittman Jr., who's quite the target hog, and Josh Downs there as well. So that's why I waited till the third round to pick him up. But at this point, the talent and the possible situation, if he's able to jump Josh Downs, it's enough there for me to make this pick.
Do you think there's a world where maybe he just upgrades on top of Alec Pierce, what Alec Pierce already does, and he's more of like an all-terrain wide receiver fill-in then? Because I think I agree with you that I think Alec Pierce is very good at what he does. But I think if you could have a wide receiver out there that can run a more diverse variety of routes, wouldn't it make more sense to add him and have that be his role? Because I think Downs is pretty locked into the slot.
Downs is pretty locked into the slot.
I don't think Pearsall gets put to the slot. I think he would be, more
be like the Z,
more
be the flanker.
Yeah. I think that would be more his role, and I think he can do a variety of things. I think he can play more downfield as much as Alec Pierce can, but I think he can work a more, like I said, more diverse bit of route. So I think that's how that would fit with, and maybe that's some hopium for Josh Downs not getting pushed out of a role. But I think Josh Downs is just too dang good.
I don't think it's necessarily that Josh Downs is getting pushed out of that role. At that point, it would be there are 3 good wide receivers And I don't know if Anthony Richardson is going to have the volume passing the
Sure.
ball to be able to support 3 wide receivers for fantasy football.
I get it. It was between Pearsall and this next player for me. So I get the other one, which is fine. So I went Roman Wilson, who went to the Steelers at pick 51 in the second round as well. Another top 50-ish pick in the draft. Another guy going to some opportunity, can play a little bit, has caught a lot of steam, especially around the Senior Bowl, has quieted down since then because Senior Bowl was, 2.5 months ago now. I think he's a solid enough player, like I said, gets a role in this offense pretty quickly. I don't think anybody's keeping him off the field at this point in that wide receiver room as it sits. Roman Wilson, a fun enough player at this spot, and somebody I like a lot more than your next pick. But Nate, why don't you talk about good old screen merchant up ahead here?
Yeah.
We got
one thing on Roman Wilson, stepping in as a wide receiver 2 for the Steelers, there's a good chance you could argue he should go off the board, even 4 or 5 spots earlier than this. We do have a lot of questions about the Steelers offense. Is Russell going to be Russ? Is Justin Fields going to be the quarterback there? And then what does that look like? But the wide receiver 2 for the Steelers, that position's always done pretty well. So, there's definitely a range of outcomes for Roman Wilson if he was to get this landing spot. But for me, at this next pick, I had to go with Malachi Corley going to the Patriots, Bob, at 68 overall. Honestly, not my favorite pick, probably my least favorite pick in this entire draft that I had to make. With the lack of talent in the wide receiver room and the investment in the Drake May, I'd take a chance on Malachi Corley in the 3rd round. He is the yak god, as many people have called him coming from this draft class. Though I was doing my research earlier today for the podcast, Bob, and Taj Washington has the same amount of yak rec this past season as Malachi
against
Corley.
better competition too.
Exactly. So I think there's something to be said there. Unfortunately, we didn't pick up Taj Washington in this draft, though he was drafted to the Browns in round 5
to go into wide receiver purgatory.
We're just never going to hear from him again, unfortunately.
Right,
So Malachi Corley was the pick here between the two of them. Day 2 draft capital. The Patriots offense, they need someone who can create yards after the catch. Damari Douglas can do that as well, but they need people who can just create yards because their offense needs space creators. They need playmakers. They need people who, once you give them the ball, something's going to happen because they haven't really had that for a couple of years now. So Malachi Corley steps in, probably a wide receiver 2 pretty quickly in this offense, if not better than that. There's not much competition. And like I said, Drake May's the quarterback there. So I do believe that there's going to be some upside here in this offense. You're going to have to buy low, though, because it's not going to be very exciting at first. That's why it's a 3rd round pick for me.
Yeah, I can't do it, man. I mean, you have to consider so much of his yak rec came off of screens.
I get it.
And the thing with screens is they are designed to pick up yards after the catch. And when, yak rec can be very helpful for determining how much of a playmaker a player is. And I think my issue is playing against inferior competition to most of the class, playing at Western Kentucky. Fact of the matter is, sorry if there's any fans out there, they don't play the best competition. It just, fact of the matter is, I apologize. You just don't. So he's doing well against porous defenses. Sure, maybe he's a little bit better than them, and maybe he deserved to play better competition. Maybe he deserved to play at a better school. Whatever the case is, doesn't matter. He played where he played. He put up the numbers he did. And when so much of the work comes off screens, that screen merchant mentality, gadgety, I think when you look at how often those plays happen in the NFL, I think Malachi Corley can be part of an offense, but I think he's one that falls into that prototypical, hey, better for NFL than for fantasy, can do things to help an offense, but I'm just not about it. So with
I
that
personally wouldn't want him to be more than my wide receiver 3 on my NFL team. I think a wide receiver 3 that has, a bunch of upside on a play-by-play basis, great. Outside of that, I'm not too hopeful. But in this situation with, we look at running backs sometimes who have an opportunity because there's just no one else in that backfield.
Sure.
It's kind of how I'm looking at it with Corley here. They got to throw the ball to somebody and he can create yards. So at least you have a chance there.
Maybe. We'll see. But I went with some upside too at this point, and a guy who, honestly, I hate the draft capital. Round 3 draft capital for quarterback, not good. Second round is much better, but we get him in the 3rd round here. Going to the Broncos, Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina, winding road to the NFL, has had, crazy series of transfers, got ran out of town by Caleb Williams, and then Caleb Williams left town too. Kind of just a wild scenario in my opinion, but kind of did well to bounce back throughout his collegiate career. Kind of seems like he got some things sorted personally, that I think a lot of us saw the videos of him kind of just being a total douche nozzle in practices to his teammates. And it's just like, well, this guy shouldn't be in an NFL locker room or a leader of men of any kind. But either which way, I think he sorted a lot out. The quarterback room right now in Denver, not good. Ben DiNucci and Jarrett Stidham. I think Spencer Rattler is better than those guys. Do I think he should be a day one starter? Maybe not. But if he's here this late, if he's drafted this late and they don't do anything else to address quarterback, I mean, I don't know how you don't draft him at this point in drafts, especially because at worst, I think he gets a starting job.
Yeah.
If you hate Spencer Rattler, if you think he's trash, ship him off. Send him away for a second-round pick next year, maybe more. You know, Malik Willis, of all people, was drafted late in drafts like this and got traded for first-round picks way back when. So not multiple, but multiple situations of getting traded for first-ish round picks. So at worst, take your shot. You might end up with a decent enough quarterback here. I like the pick. I like the landing spot in terms of opportunity. He's going to get work. We're going to find out our answer quickly. And that's something nice about rookie picks when you find the answer quickly versus having to sit around and wait on a guy. You know, if he can't get starting work over Stidham and DiNucci, he doesn't deserve to be on your fantasy roster, let alone an NFL one. So moving on to your pick, let's close this thing out slowly but surely-ish, quicker than not. What do you got here at your pick? 209.
309. 33rd overall, as we say on the spreadsheet here. Bob, nobody has been talking about Devontae Walker ever since his poor Senior Bowl performance. He's literally just fallen off the face of the planet. We haven't talked about him. I haven't heard anyone else talking about him. But despite that, I do think Devontae Walker is still a good wide receiver. He's still a day 2 wide receiver. He is here going to the Falcons in the 3rd round. Steps in pretty easily, I think, as their wide receiver 3, if not their wide receiver 2. They don't have too much competition there outside of Drake London. And he stretches the field, something that they don't really have right now. They have Darnell Mooney, but Devontae Walker, I think, can be just as good of a wide receiver as Mooney, if not better. He did have those drop issues at the Senior Bowl, but he's always in the right place at the right time, and he's got the athleticism to win before the catch and creating separation, while also being able to create yards after the catch as well. So despite the lack of hype that we've seen around Walker for the past couple months, I still think he's got some upside. And in the 3rd round, going to a place where he can step in possibly as a wide receiver 2 by the end of the season. Hey, Kirk Cousins can stretch the ball down the field. Devontae Walker can get down there. I think there's some potential with this one. A lot of upside that could come out of this one and doesn't really cost you that much. So at the 309, picking up Devontae Walker, I'm pretty happy about this one. I think he's become really undervalued. Really a flip from where he was at the beginning of this pre-draft process.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy downhill spiral for him. I mean, a guy who was a fringe probably first round. The early second at probably worst, mid-second at worst, I should say. But yeah, since the Senior Bowl with, just having terrible practices. And I mean, god awful. I mean, the nice thing is he was always finding green grass. But
like I said,
being able to secure the catch is pretty awesome too. So I don't hate the pick here. Probably somebody that, again, I'm at worst case, if you hate the player, picking up somebody who can have a high upside boom week if he does, in fact, steal that wide receiver 2 spot, has a couple, a 3 for 120 and a touchdown. See you later, guy. You can flip that for a heck of a lot more than you just drafted him for. And I think, as much as I like the talent of Walker, I think he fits into a deep threat role that is, cliche again, better for NFL than fantasy. But everybody's going to be hinged on that huge big play upside that I think he does bring. But speaking about this was an interesting pick for me. And I this was one, again, siding on the talent. And I think a player who has also not been talked about a ton, Will Shipley, running back out of Clemson, going to the Texans here at pick 127. So day 3 pick, running back, going to a cemented in running back room. Bob, what the heck are you doing? Will Shipley offers a element of, pass catching alone, as well as running the ball that not a lot of running backs in this class do. I think it's a pretty short list, in fact, but Will Shipley does it well. He did it against great competition in the NCAA. Clemson's no joke. Maybe you've heard of it, but Will Shipley, good enough player. You're not expecting them to move on from Mixon anytime soon. They're pretty locked into that contract. They're paying him not quite a few millions of dollars, but a couple handfuls of millions of dollars, but not like this $20 million a season deal or anything like that. But they're paying him a good amount of money. They don't have a real potential out till after the 2025 season. So you're probably locked in either which way. But I think Will Shipley can play a nice complement role. And at this point in drafts, I'm really looking for players that I believe in, which I believe in the talent of Will Shipley, and players that I believe that can fit into a good enough role where I can, see it panning out. And we saw last year with, the banger that Damian Pierce's really didn't work in that offense. And I think Will Shipley profiles somewhat similarly to a skill set of Devin Singletary, who we saw do well in this system as well. I think he can play alongside Joe Mixon. And I think both can do well in this offense and thrive. Will Shipley, I think, is going to be another one of those, running backs that takes a little bit. Like, I don't think you're going to see a lot of year one pop. Maybe you see some exciting weeks if Mixon needs like a week off or two from a hamstring injury or whatever it might be. But I like the pick here. I like the talent here at this pick. And I think, if Will Shipley ends up in any other one of these situations that we've already touched on, Arizona, New York, the Chargers, the Cowboys even. If Will Shipley's in any other one of those situations, I think he goes a lot earlier. Even if it's the same situation, but, maybe similar to draft capital. I think we're talking about him a little bit earlier than we are here. But
Shipley's got the ability to be really efficient on only a couple touches because of his receiving ability, because of his explosiveness. Not as many running backs in this class are able to be as efficient, consistently efficient as Will Shipley. There's some guys like Benson Wright who, they can have those home run threat plays, but they don't do it consistently enough where that efficiency is really there. Will Shipley, a guy who was really efficient in college.
Yep, 100%. Get into another player who's pretty efficient, especially this last season in college. Player I like a good bit. Interesting landing spot. Don't know if I love it, but it's this team I love a little less than some other landing spots that are out there. But it is what it is. But I like the player a good bit. Talk about him.
Yeah, Malik Washington. This is my only day 3 pick, I think, Bob.
Yeah,
all my picks are day 2. That's just kind
of
Ben Sinnott. He's my day 3 pick, but I don't believe he's a day 3 player. Malik Washington goes to the Jets at the 111th pick overall. Easily steps in as a wide receiver 3 on this team, and I think could definitely give Mike Williams some competition for the wide receiver 2, especially from a target area, because out of the slot, Malik Washington, he handled 138 targets last year, Bob, and he had 111 receptions for 1,384 yards, 9 touchdowns, playing for Virginia in his first year at Virginia. Transferred from Northwestern and immediately made an impact on his new team. I love it. 6.4 yards after the catch per reception last year. So he handled a lot of volume, was able to create a lot of yards after the catch as well. And Bob, here is the great thing. Across his career, he has seen 321 targets, caught 230 balls, and has only dropped 6. That is a 2.5% drop rate. Malik Washington has some of the best hands in the class. Like I said, 138 targets this year, only dropped 3. Also, 64.7% contested catch rate. He's small, only 5'8", but he's sturdy at 195 pounds, and he wins those. He is physical at the catch point. He's physical after the catch as well. I think he is one of the hidden gems in this wide receiver class, and someone I'm going to be really looking for at the back end of the 3rd into the 4th round if he gets this kind of draft capital. As one of my favorite sleepers, Malik Washington, I was excited to pick him up here with the last pick I had.
Yeah, I like it a good bit as well. Also a fan, a lot of efficiency numbers like you touched on. But I took the last pick here because it was given to me, I guess. And I took Audric Estime off the board. He went to the Buccaneers at pick 125. And I, if nothing else, love this as a team fit. This is one of my favorite draft picks because I think it really does a good number to not kill Rachaad White, who is a good player, who is a good receiver of the ball, who has a role on the NFL team. But this gives them somebody who can spell him from a pure touches standpoint, pure, runner between the tackles, somebody who could probably be a little more efficient in that role. And the thing about when you want to poo-poo on Rachaad White about his efficiency and things like that is less than 4 yards per carry. He's running behind the 4th worst run blocking offensive line in the NFL last year. Give the man some credit. I mean, he's still an electric player. You see what they love, Rachaad White. They want to use him, but bringing in someone that can actually be a compliment to him is good practice. And again, we're moving into that timeshare era of, we've been in it, honestly. Wake up if you haven't realized. But, running backs, a lot of running backs are going to get work, and more than one per team are going to get work. And I think Audric Estime is good enough and efficient enough, despite a pretty poor combine performance. Just a really good compliment. Again, another guy who I can see a role in an offense developing for Audric Estime in this Buccaneers backfield. So that is the last pick. Nate, do you want to talk about one stash and the rest of the board that you might have?
Well, I do have to say one player that I think has the opportunity to really outproduce their draft capital, both in the NFL draft and also where we'd probably be picking them up in our fantasy drafts, is Jermaine Burton. Going here in the third round to the Rams at the 80th overall pick. Jermaine Burton, if you looked at Matt Harmon's reception perception, almost a full green route tree with his success rate. Jermaine Burton, a good route runner, wins contested catches. He's got good athleticism. He really checks all the boxes for a wide receiver to be successful. But off the field issues that haven't been terrible. Anything. I don't think he's done anything illegal, but it's just maybe he's not trying super hard in practice. Maybe he's just not concentrating. He's catching the ball and it's getting knocked out every now and then. It's just the little inconsistencies that have really followed him from when he was at Georgia to when he was at Alabama that just have not allowed him to really take the next level and be a top prospect like we have seen in this wide receiver class where there's so many. Jermaine Burton could have his name up there. If he was more consistent across his college career, he would have a potential to be a top 5, top 6 wide receiver in this draft class. I really do think so. But he didn't. So he's outside the top 10 for a lot of people. He's outside the top 10 for me. And there's some teams that apparently don't even have him on his draft board because of some of the character concerns we've heard with Jermaine Burton. He's one of the more boom or bust players in this draft class. And if you can pick him up in the 4th round, I think you have to give him a shot because if he can pull it together, he would be an incredible complement to Puka Nacua. He plays outside. He can stretch the field. In that Rams offense, Burton could be a really nice value find in the 4th round.
Yeah, Jermaine Burton's such an interesting case because we've talked on him, and he's somebody who did well looking at production profiles and the 600 some players that I've looked at now, 194 of them being wide receivers. Ultimately in this class did okay, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, just looking at pure raw production, 32nd percentile out of 194 wide receivers graded. That's pure, just plain production, year in, year out, raw numbers, the things that create fantasy points. The one nice thing about Burton, he's one of few players and a handful of players in this class that have perfect strength of schedule gradings from me, meaning he always faced a top 25 schedule and at Georgia and at Alabama, kind of to be expected. When you see him do well, like you said, a route winner, but doesn't have the numbers, didn't have awesome quarterback play, especially with the last couple seasons, or the last season, I should say. We expected a lot more from Burton in this transfer to Alabama. You were somebody that touted him as a, kind of a sleeper or somebody who could be breaking out in the college landscape, and that just never came to fruition. I agree 100%. Jermaine Burton is such an interesting case. I'd be real interested to see how he shapes up when it comes to things. But 32nd percentile raw production, not great. Not a lot of players that do well in that area of the production model I have here that I've created. So, hey, if you want some of that, head over to Discord. I've been dropping in little tidbits of that almost every single day. Different positions, this class, previous classes. It's been a trip, and it's a problem I can't stop. So, but either which way, I think that is going to do it for us. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, we have a ton coming your way this week. We have the rookie blockbuster from Mike and Nate. We have a rookie or a moves to make before your rookie draft from myself and Zach. And then we have live streams every single day following an NFL draft day. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning we'll be here. Check out how you can pre-order your rookie draft guide 2024 from us in the YouTube description box, in the pinned comment below. But with all that said, all the promo in the books, we're going to head on here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.